start out with the war in the Middle East this morning. Hamas is shrugging off the president's demand that the group release all of its remaining hostages by this weekend, or, quote, all hell will break out. That is a quote from the president of the United States. It comes as the King of Jordan will be at the White House today, a nation that could be critical to President Trump's larger plans for the region. I want to bring in CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes to break this all down. Nancy, I heard your reporting this morning on CBS Mornings, where it took a lot of people by surprise what the president said about Hamas and this ultimatum that he delivered. Does anybody understand or know what he's signaling by saying that all hell will break out?
I don't think they do, Vlad, partly because this was an off-the-cuff remark that was made in response to a reporter's question in the Oval Office. It didn't appear to be something that he had planned to say. And so how serious is he? No one really knows. And that's part of the strategy with this Trump administration, is to leave adversaries guessing about whether he really means it or not. And so now we've got 4 days to find out, because this deadline that he set is for Hamas to release the hostages by noon on Saturday. He says if they don't do it, all hell is going to break out. We don't know exactly what that means. He added that he believes that most of the remaining hostages are dead, which would ostensibly make it harder to release them. But nevertheless, this is what the president has said. And it's another thing that he said, Vlad, that is probably going to create some tension in his meeting here at the White House with the King of Jordan in just about an hour and a half, because in an interview with Fox News, when he was asked whether Palestinians would have a right to return to Gaza under his vision of taking ownership of the territory and causing all of the Palestinians to leave while he rebuilt it into a beautiful set of resorts on the Mediterranean. He said no, they wouldn't have the right to come back. They'd be very happy living somewhere else. And that is not the way that the King of Jordan and leader of Egypt and other Middle Eastern leaders see things going. Some of them have described that proposal as ethnic cleansing. So we'll see whether these two men get into it today, especially with foreign aid for Jordan apparently on the line.
Yeah, it will be very interesting to see, Nancy, when this weekend comes, if Hamas follows through with the president's ultimatum, or if they don't. And then it's sort of the ball is in the president's court. If he doesn't do whatever it is that he's signaling that he'll do, he'll seem weak, and yet it doesn't appear that there's a strategy to do anything if Hamas doesn't meet that deadline. So we'll, of course, be watching. The other thing that I thought was interesting, Nancy, was the president was asked who his successor was, and you would think that it would be the vice president of the United States. Instead, the president said something very interesting and very different.
Right. He said, no, I don't necessarily see J.D. Vance as my successor. I do not see him as my successor. Basically, he said the vice president's only been on the job for a few weeks, so let's see. He doesn't want to tip his hand now when there are 4 years to go before the election. It's a fairly unorthodox response from a president of the United States. Normally, they'd sort of pay lip service, at the very least, to the person who they've chosen as their number two. He didn't criticize his vice president in any way. He just said there's a lot of people who are going to want that job, and he thinks that the vice president's doing a good job for right now, but let's see.
Yeah, it was interesting, Nancy. I took a look at some of the headlines of newspapers in France, and they're all sort of making a point to highlight those comments, given that the vice president was in Paris for that AI conference. So while perhaps the rest of the world isn't paying that much attention to it, certainly the country that the vice president is visiting, one of our key allies, is. Nancy Cordes for us at the White House. Nancy, wait, real quick, Nancy, is there going to be a press conference between the president and with the King of Jordan at some point later today?
There is not a press conference scheduled, and it's eagle-eyed of you to pick up on that, because there was a press conference when the leader of Japan was here. There was a press conference when the leader of Israel was here. No press conference this time, which could be a reflection of the fact that you wouldn't anticipate that the King of Jordan would be able to express support for this Gaza plan that President Trump has laid out. So it wouldn't be a great PR move for either one of them. The White House hasn't said why they're not doing it. All we know is we'll get a glimpse of them saying hello, saying goodbye, but no formal press conference.
Yeah, it will be interesting, Nancy, given that there isn't a press conference when the two are sitting in that room for that photo op. I know you and the rest of the press corps will shout some questions, and we'll see if either of those men respond. If I know the president, he probably might. So we'll be watching. Thank you, Nancy.
We'll do our best.
Thanks, Nance. All right, back to that situation in the Middle East. In Israel, there has been mixed reaction to President Trump's warning to Hamas. Listen to this.
I think the most important thing is to get back our people to Israel and not push it and not threaten the Hamas, because that's not the way.
To say that we're going to squash you and kill you even more plays into Hamas's hands and plays out of our hands.
I think this is a pattern that you make some highly outrageous statement and then you back down from it. You back down from it to something more moderate.
All right. Meanwhile, demonstrators have been protesting outside of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office in Jerusalem this morning. They are calling for an end to the war and the release of all the remaining hostages. CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay has more.
Well, the news of Hamas halting hostage releases is just devastating to both Israelis and Palestinians, as it means the ceasefire is once again in jeopardy. The Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said he's readying forces in Gaza. Now, families of Israeli hostages blocked traffic in Tel Aviv. They're panicked by Hamas halting more hostage releases like the one last weekend. And they're distraught after seeing the condition they were in. They came home with news both welcome and distressing. Hostage Alon Ohel is alive but starving with untreated wounds and bound in chains. That's according to his mother, who made an impassioned plea to President Trump to do everything in his power to bring her son home. In the past 4 weeks, the now imperiled ceasefire has brought home hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and allowed hundreds of thousands of Gazans to return to what's left of their homes in the north of the Gaza Strip. Those gains are now in jeopardy, with Gazans beginning to stock up on supplies for fear that war will return. Here in Tel Aviv, Israelis are just distraught over the 76 hostages still held by Hamas. And today, the Israeli military announced that the oldest one of them, 86-year-old Shlomo Mansour, was murdered in captivity. He was a survivor of the 1941 pogrom in Iraq, where hundreds were killed in an anti-Semitic riot. Back to you.
Just tragic. Chris Livesay, thank you very much.